Let's break down 5 players to stash before week 8 of the fantasy season. These are players that should be out there readily available on the waiver wire that can help bring some upside to your roster and have some value as the season progresses. All right, we're going to kick the video off with Tez Johnson of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, sitting around 49% rostered, had 15.8 fantasy points in week 7, 9 targets, 4 catches, 58 receiving yards, and a touchdown. So this will be the highest rostered player that we talk about in today's video. We did talk about him in last week's stash video as well, but still lowly rostered enough here and is available in enough leagues that I think he's worth talking about, as he has had a touchdown in 2 straight games now for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And going into week 7, I just kind of felt like this was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers wide receiver who, in terms of opportunity on the table, had the most potential upside. And maybe it was just a good guess because we still have Chamir Johnson also hanging around who could have some sort of impact here for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but he had just 1 target, 0 catches this past week. And then, of course, Sterling Shepard is still hanging around at the wide receiver position. He did have 7 targets, 7 catches, 25 receiving yards, and he sits around 25% rostered, but Shepard just hasn't had that true upside. The volume's okay. Feels like Tez Johnson is the potential red zone threat, and he's kind of taking on the Mike Evans role, although he doesn't really profile like Mike Evans. And then, of course, that's the biggest point here is we now know that Mike Evans is set to miss a majority of the rest of the season. Does look like he could come back at the end of the fantasy season here, but for the time being, there's going to have to be pass catchers on this team that step up in one of the best offenses in the league. I know this past week was not their week, no matter what they tried, even with a lot of injured players for the Lions, but still, this Buccaneers offense is going to be very good as the season progresses, and we still have Emeka Egbuka banged up with that hamstring issue, of course, and then we still have Chris Godwin also banged up. He's not going to play this week. Cade Otton hanging around at the tight end position. Good running backs here, even with Bucky Irving out, but the point being is that there is plenty of opportunity to go around in this Buccaneers offense, and so far over the past 2 weeks, Tez Johnson is taking advantage of that. And he had 9 targets this past week, led the team in total targets. So things are looking very good overall. He tied Cade Otton for total targets, but led the team in terms of wide receivers in total targets. So, good chemistry building with Baker Mayfield. Good enough matchup here in week 8 of the season before a very needed bye week in week 9 for the Buccaneers. So Tez Johnson, a player that I really think is worth rostering overall, but can still be considered a stash as we move into week 8. Next up, let's talk about Kansas City Chiefs running back Bashard Smith. 13.1 fantasy points in week 7, sitting around 26% rostered. 14 touches on the ground, 39 rushing yards, 5 targets, 5 catches, 42 receiving yards. Now, Bashard Smith, another player that we've talked about in recent stash videos over the past few weeks, and a player that's starting to heat up a little bit. Now, we looked to this past week in week 7. A bit of this was game script. They were blowing out the Raiders, all that stuff. So they did utilize, some different skill set players here, but you still got to feel encouraged about Bashard Smith. This was his highest percentage of snaps played in week 7 at 35% snaps played. Isaiah Pacheco had a nice game on the field, 56% of snaps, but we did see a slight decrease overall to Kareem Hunt's usage on the field for just 19% of snaps. So that's kind of the hope here. I still think Pacheco is going to get the snaps and keep his role, but Bashard Smith could potentially start to eat in to the total running back snaps for the Chiefs and take away a lot of what Kareem Hunt has been kind of bringing to the table, I guess you could say, and ultimately get some of those total snaps, right? So we'll see how things shake out here in week 8. It's another home game for the Chiefs. They're going up against the Commanders with no Jaden Daniels. So this is another opportunity for Bashard Smith to get involvement if the Chiefs can get up on the Commanders early in this game and have to continue to utilize their running back position and run out the clock and all that stuff. I don't know if they'll blow out the Commanders like they did the Raiders this past week, but this game script does look promising for Bashard Smith and a nice competitive matchup in week 9 against the Buffalo Bills on the road. So the hope here is that Smith can take over that pass catching role, and we have definitely seen that over the past couple of weeks with 3 or more targets in 4 straight games and at least 3 catches in 4 straight games. But this past week week. Once again, 5 targets, 5 catches, 42 receiving yards. So this is a running back who could break out at any point in one of the best offenses in the league. Now, this is an offense that likes to utilize a lot of different players, spread the football around. So there is that aspect here. But ultimately, the pass catching upside could keep Bashard Smith afloat. And once again, it just feels like this could be a running back in a very good offense who, once again, breaks out. So I think he is worth stashing right now. Next up, let's talk about Isaiah Davis of the Jets. Just 5.2 fantasy points this past week, only 2 touches, 10 yards on the ground, 5 yards per carry, not bad. 4 targets, 2 catches, 22 receiving yards. He sits at 13% rostered. We're not really looking like at overall stats when it comes to the argument for Isaiah Davis, who, like I said, is just 13% rostered right now. He has had 5 yards per carry in 2 of the last 3 games, which is nice to see. But we're more so looking at the fact here that, Breece Hall is, supposedly on the trade block and maybe moving to another team. We'll find out that these kind of rumors are heating up around the Jets that they could be having a fire sale around skill position players. And with Breece Hall not being signed to a long-term contract, it does make sense. And then B, we have Breece Hall at the same time mysteriously popping up on the injury report with a knee issue as well. So don't forget the trade deadline, week 9 for NFL. We will see some trades go through. It's not as crazy as other sports, but we will see some, and Breece Hall is one of the leading candidates to be traded. On top of that, we know that Braylon Allen is on IR right now, and he might need surgery. I mean, he could miss the entirety of the season, but he's going to miss a majority of the fantasy season. So that just leaves Isaiah Davis. I mean, we have other names on this roster at running back. I guess Khalil Herbert would be the most notable, but there's really nobody here who stands out. And Isaiah Davis is a player who had some upside last year. Don't forget, we saw some good outings from Braylon Allen last year, but weeks 13 and 14 of last year, we saw double-digit fantasy performances for Isaiah Davis as well. I mean, you just got to think back, right? Through that stretch of the season, it was like, who do we pick up? In the meantime, while Breece Hall is a little bit banged up, it was Isaiah Davis or Braylon Allen, and most people gravitated towards Braylon Allen. And then looking back, it was like, oh, now we got Isaiah Davis in the mix as well. So this is a player who does have some nice upside, who can bring some pass catching ability to the table as well. And if there's no other running back on this team, he is certainly going to be worth rostering. At the end of the day, volume is king, and he is going to get a shot if Breece Hall is truly traded. The nice thing here is it's a really nice matchup this week against the Cincinnati Bengals, even on the road here with a banged-up Tyrod Taylor, whoever's going to be playing quarterback this week. There's going to be an opportunity here if Breece Hall is truly injured and misses week 8 of the season for us to get a preview of Isaiah Davis going up against the worst run defense in the NFL before that week 9 bye week for the Jets. And then it's tough right out of the bye week, I won't lie. The Cleveland Browns and New England Patriots, good matchup against the Ravens, but then they get the Falcons, another good matchup against the Dolphins. So there could be some moments here where Isaiah Davis is very fantasy relevant, even with some of those tough matchups coming up. But once again, this is a player who could be looking at true RB1 volume. That is always valuable. He's very lowly rostered. Go ahead, get him on your roster right now, just in case. All right, last running back that I want to mention is Kyle Manungai of the Chicago Bears. And I know he's made a lot of waiver videos. He made our waiver video this past week. He is at 44% rostered, coming off of a nice game. 17.4 fantasy points, 81 yards on the ground, a rushing touchdown, 2 catches, for 13 receiving yards. And yeah, like I said, he's made a lot of waiver videos this past week, but he still sits at just 44% rostered. So similar to Tez Johnson, I do feel like he is worth talking about here. And one thing that I do want to point out before we kind of break Manungai down a bit here is that he gets the Ravens this week, a great matchup. The Bengals next week, another great matchup. Then the Giants, once again, another really solid matchup. We are talking about some of the worst teams overall against the run. Now, the Giants have improved actually quite a bit here in terms of their ranking, but it's still good enough. We'll take it. But the next 2 weeks, looking at 2 of the worst teams in terms of fantasy points allowed to the running back position. So Manungai's in a good spot, and DeAndre Swift is still the clear-cut RB1 here for the Bears, but it's worth noting, like, he's been in and out of the injury report for the past week or two. I don't know if it means a whole lot, if there's a lot of merit there, because ultimately he's a veteran running back. He's probably going to be on the field, and they're going to allow some, leeway in terms of practicing or not practicing if he needs it. But that is worth noting, I suppose. And still, Manungai had 13 touches this past week, 6.2 yards per carry, and a really nice day against the Saints. And ultimately, the Bears are just running the football a lot more since coming out of their week 5 bye week. And there's kind of this loose rumor circulating, like Ben Johnson, obviously tied to that David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs system with the Lions. Maybe he wants to do something a bit similar with DeAndre Swift and Kyle Manungai. Maybe there's enough volume to go around for both of these running backs. And I think the next 2 weeks, even with 2 road games here, we're going to have plenty of opportunity to get a potential preview of that, as once again, we're facing 2 really soft run defenses in the Ravens and the Bengals. So this is a player to go ahead and get on your roster now. At worst, he's a very solid handcuff to DeAndre Swift, who once again is dealing with some injury issues, and ultimately is a player who could have standalone value even if DeAndre Swift is healthy. So go ahead, add him to your roster, especially if you guys have a need at the running back position. All right, last but not least, I want to talk about Chamir DK of the Tennessee Titans, coming off of what some are calling a breakout game. 16.9 fantasy points, 4 targets, 4 catches, 70 receiving yards, and a receiving touchdown in week 7. Sits at just 7% rostered, and he has a great matchup, the best potential matchup that we could have as we approach week 8 for wide receivers, as he's facing the Indianapolis Colts, who rank dead last in terms of fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver position. Now, this defense isn't bad. They just are so good against the run and getting after the quarterback, and then they're putting up so many points on teams or running the football so well offensively that by the end of the game, teams are just throwing the football as much as they can, and it is hurting the secondary's ranking. But at the end of the day, this is the worst team against wide receivers in terms of fantasy points scored. So we have to take a look at that. Now, DK has had a very solid role with the Tennessee Titans this year as a return man. He actually leads the NFL in total return yards, so he has a role with the Titans already. But this was the first week that we actually saw him make an offensive impact. Now, might be thinking here, it's the Tennessee Titans. You've probably maybe already turned off this video. I don't want anything to do with this offense, and I don't blame you. I've been 100% out on the Titans offense this year, and I don't think anybody's excited about what's happening with Cam Ward at quarterback in his rookie season. They've already fired their head coach. It's just been a disaster offensively and from a fantasy standpoint. But I do always say at the end of the day, bad offenses still produce good fantasy players, and we've just been kind of waiting for somebody from the Titans. We've had moments with Tony Pollard's been okay. LK O'Mannor has had some nice games. I guess Calvin Ridley one good game this year before he got hurt, and I guess he's set back to come back at some point here. But there's been no consistency here, no real upside. So maybe we could have a breakout player in DK, and if you're really hurting that wide receiver, especially in deeper formats, he could certainly be worth a stash just for that potential chance. We looked at week 7, 4 targets to Van Jefferson, 5 to A.O. Manor. Ridley missed this past week. Then DK had 4 targets. Chicken Conquo had 2 targets, 0 catches at the tight end position. So, once again, not real any consistency here. He's not leading the teams in targets or anything, but I do think that once again, even on the road here, and what is probably not going to be a very good day for the Titans, but a game where they will be playing from behind and have a need to throw the football, if they're going to get DK involved, this could certainly be the week against a very soft secondary in the Indianapolis Colts. So I think there is a potential with him having a 16.9 fantasy day in week 7. If he has another nice day in week 8, that his roster percentage moves up going into week 9. So now is the time to get him on your bench, especially if you guys are hurting out wide receiver. Take a chance, because somebody has to produce at some point in this Tennessee Titans offense, I would hope, from a fantasy perspective. So now is the time to go ahead and stash him. And there you guys have it there. My 5 players to stash before week 8 of the fantasy season is here. Don't forget, guys, I'm answering as many fantasy football questions as I can in the comment section down below. So make sure you guys drop all your fantasy questions down there. I'll get back to you guys as soon as I can. While you guys are down there, it does me a huge favor. Helps out the channel tremendously if you guys hit that subscribe button and that like button on the way out. When the videos and playlists pop up on the screen, make sure you guys go check out all of our Week 8 fantasy content. We'll have everything that you guys could possibly need to dominate this week and every week of the fantasy season. And with that, I'll say thank you guys so much for watching and or listening. And remember, you saw it here on The Catch.